All right, let's talk climate change. All right, Barrett, what are your thoughts on the severity of climate change right now?
All right, well, so this is I feel like this has been a big talking point the past few years, honestly, but recently in the last year or so. How I feel about climate change, I know some people don't believe that it's real. I personally do think it's a thing. I do think it's real.
Okay, so as a conservative,
as a conservative, I do believe it's real.
Cool.
I don't really know how people don't. My thing is when you look at Los Angeles, right? You can see the pollution. You can see those things like the inversion in Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. You can see it, right? Where my disagreements come in with typically the more liberal view is the severity, right? So you have people saying, like AOC, saying the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't start doing something. We need to ground planes. We need to get rid of cars, build a bridge to Hawaii. I think that's insane. I think that's crazy, right? I think there are things we can do. I think most of the things that would be the most effective are the things that are being taken away or being talked down from the left, right? Like nuclear power. I think that is a big way that we could solve some of these issues. So yeah, I think it is real. It is a problem. I don't think it's as big of a deal, as severe as it's being made out to be. In addition to, I just don't know if it's the absolute top priority for the United States at this point.
Right, especially with everybody and how it seems to be the only hot button topic.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
All right, Kwaku.
So my thoughts are this. We need to be unified with the world on this subject because China treats the environment like garbage. They just do. India as well, right? So yeah, if we can do our part, but the reality is other places have to do their part too. And you know what? The Chinese government doesn't care what AOC has to say, okay? And I'm a liberal, right? They don't. They absolutely don't care. And so do we have to do some sort of United Nations resolution? What do we need to do? I don't know, but we can't just talk about how, in America, we have too many straws. They're killing the turtles. Let's get some, the bamboo straws that the coffee shops are putting out.
That's the problem. It's the plastic straws.
That's, you know what I mean? That's not really going to cut to the meat of it. I think that some things we can start right now or are really not things we need to do more of, but do less of. So one example is President Trump rolled back some regulations that I think were really, really bad. So I'm gonna give some receipts here, okay? So I'm not quoting the air, okay? If that's all right.
Do it. We're all for actual factual.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Obama put forth the stream protection rule. Essentially, mining activities had to be kept just 1,000 feet away from streams, right?
Okay.
He undid that rule. They don't have to. They can mine however close to streams they want.
Yeah.
Another thing about the power plant water pollution rule, basically it was the level of toxic chemicals near streams and near bodies of water. There's a certain level they have to be at for it to be maintained. He got rid of that too, right? So there's a couple of these things that were environmentally conscious that Obama instated that Trump, for sake of business and sake of easy management, got rid of. I think those are bad ideas, right? So I'm not saying we need to go and build a bridge to Hawaii and get rid of everyone's cars. I think that's kind of kooky, but I do think that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be putting stuff in rivers. We can be reasonable here. And I think because Trump's administration is doing stuff like that, it then empowers sort of people on my side who are more far left to be able to say more crazy things like, hey, we need to get rid of all of buses or whatever things are being proposed. That's lunacy, but it gives more credence to it because we're doing dumb stuff here.
Right. Okay, so then what, on the conservative side, what do you think the solutions are? Or is there a solution to climate change?
Yeah, so like I said before, right? A lot of people focus in on solar and water power, which are by far the more expensive and the least effective solutions, right? Nuclear power has been a a big like buzzword, you know, like people are like, oh, nuclear, you know, they instantly think of places like Chernobyl, right? And nobody really wants to use nuclear power, but they always forget that most of our naval ships, especially the Nimitz-class aircraft carrier and the Virginia-class nuclear subs that we have in the U.S. military, are nuclear powered. I can't recall a time when one of our U.S. carriers just exploded in a nuclear blast.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like we don't know why, you know?
Yeah.
The reason like Chernobyl and some of the Soviet ships back in the day did melt down is because the Soviets gave two craps about safety. Like they didn't care at all. They're like, yeah, just throw it together.
Yeah.
We'll see. The United States, we have been very careful, and nuclear power has proven to be like very effective. In addition, I think a lot of people think like, oh, they're going to build a nuclear power plant in downtown New York City. Like, I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Okay, but I will say this though. I think we have great evidence that nuclear power does destroy, because Chernobyl Diaries did terrible at the box office. And it was one of the
That's
absolutely
fair.
dreadful
I didn't put that
movies.
into
I'm
account.
just
You're right.
saying.
Oh,
No, I mean, I would agree there. Like we're doing this thing where we're yelling doomsday, right? Because in America, we like fantastical, we like fantasy, right? I mean, do you remember in 2012 when there was that group of people that literally just went to, what was like Kansas or Kentucky or one of those dumb little states, where they just got a bunch of people and left because they're like, oh, the world's ending, we're gonna get together.
Yeah.
We are a people that enjoy that stuff.
Right.
And so we don't ever take a step back and go, Mayans didn't predict the end of the world. We joked about it, but everyone was a little bit scared.
Yeah,
You
there's
all
just a
know
little.
we were all a little bit scared because we have this doomsday feeling. I also, like every 10 years, they always say, we only have 30 years left
Yeah.
until everything goes to hell. I mean, eventually, one day that could happen, right? But like, we can't be so doomsday about it and then nothing happens and then push it off again. We can take action, but that includes taking action with China and taking action with India and certain European nations. We have to. And if we don't, we cannot save the world alone, just America's like
Right.
carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So you say that UN is probably where we need to start focusing our efforts rather than going to Congress and saying, hey, let's clean up America first? Or
Yeah, I think that I think if we go to Congress, we can make a model and say this is what we can do, show other nations that we're willing to put forth the effort. But when has the UN actually done anything? That's, I mean,
let's
like,
be real.
That's a good point.
you know,
I think
so
like I agree with you, because I think China and India are they like produce significantly more like greenhouse gases and like burn more fossil fuels than we do, right? Also, I think the problem with going to the UN is I don't think China cares what the UN says, you know? Because in reality, the UN really doesn't have any power over places like China and India. They just don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, China was part of the Paris Accords. Am I right? Like
I believe so.
They joined in it, and their emissions went up. They just don't listen, you know?
They don't care.
And so unless there's like a worldwide carbon tax that everyone agrees to, then like nothing will change. Like they tried it in France, that like the oil tax, and people rioted. My thought is that I think the free market, the private sector is the best chance to lower emissions, right? If people put forward, like they make it known that like we want more electric cars, we want more things like that, and companies realize like, okay, hey, there's money to be made in this, they're gonna start making things better, right? So like the Prius, when the Prius came out, let's be real, no one was like, that's a sweet car. Like, that's a good looking car.
grandpa car.
But now we have Teslas, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, that's awesome, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as those things keep going, I think the free market is just gonna continue to create better and better solutions to these problems. But if the government stays involved and keeps spending all that money, I think the government can push those initiatives. But if they keep spending all this money, there's really not that much of an incentive for these companies to spend all that money for a low return. Does that make sense? Like,
Right.
it wouldn't make sense to them.
You're talking just straight capitalism.
Yeah, I really do think that would be one of the best ways to solve these issues, if like excluding China and India, like just in the United States. China, that would be a different issue. Like,
yeah.
it would be tough to get
Factories
them.
shutting down.
Yeah,
I mean, like there's just
but
no way to.
within the U.S.
So the question is, whoever's elected president next, whether it's Donald Trump again or it's Elizabeth Warren or whoever gets the nomination, whoever wins the presidency, should we be tough with China and say, you guys need to clean up your stuff? Like, do we withhold business from them? Like, what do we do to ensure that they hold up their end of the deal, or that they actually do something? Because we can't continue to have them like destroy the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we're gonna work on what we have, what do we do with China and India to say, you guys need to clean yourself up?
Yeah. So I mean, I want to hear your answer to that as well. My thought is people like Greta, right? I don't know how to say her last name.
Thunberg.
Thunberg? Yeah, Greta Thunberg. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think going to the UN and saying like, you guys have destroyed my childhood. I don't think China's gonna be like, oh well, we should give in, you know? Like, I don't want to hurt them. I think it needs to be advantageous to them. Like, still like the capitalist type viewpoint, right? So my one issue with that and like how Trump has handled the whole China thing is that from a business standpoint, Trump is doing everything right with China, right? The problem is China doesn't really care if like their employees are like laid off, right? Or if their people die. He doesn't really care, you know? He can wait out Trump. Like, so until it comes to the point where China's like, no, actually that makes sense for us to do that. Like, we could actually become more advanced by doing this, then I don't think they're going to change. Because like, why would they? You know, if they don't care about the environment, if they don't care about climate change, they just care about, you know, getting things done, I don't see a point. So if we could come up with a way, and I don't know the answer to that, but if we could come up with a way where it's like, look, like you're going to make money off this, it's advantageous for you to shut those factories down and start moving towards this direction, I think they would do. I mean, they're smart. They're smart people. India and China, like, they're not dumb, you know?
So, I think Greta is sweet, cute little girl. People are making fun of her. You know, look, I think she's ultimately, look, there's a lot of hyperbole, but you got to get people's attention, right? We got media capitalism in this country. That's what we've asked for, okay? Right? We had a president who opened up his first presidential Republican debate by roasting Rosie O'Donnell, okay? So we got to remember, this is our culture we live in, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, she's using a lot of forceful words, saying things like, you destroyed my childhood, but I'm one of the lucky ones, and stuff like that. But if it works, you know, if it can somehow get the major nations around the world to maybe clean up their act, okay. Will it? I don't know. I don't know if this Eastern European girl is really going to change anyone's mind. But if she can be the voice or the face of a movement that can pressure governments to take action, then, you know. So I'm not buying that people are looking at Greta and going, she's the one who's going to save us. But rather they're saying, okay, she's the face of this very young movement that is going to pressure people in power to do something different.
Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily what she was saying, but it was kind of like the power behind the movement.
Yeah.
That's really going to start things rolling, you think?
Yeah.
Or at least you're hoping.
Yeah, I mean, when people are like, this isn't her opinion, and she's clearly being directed. Of course. Do you think she pulled this off by herself?
Not just scripting this herself.
Of course she's being directed. And that's okay. That's how politics works. That's how these things work. I saw this one tweet, it was so dumb, where they had like Hitler's little girl Hitler used with like the braids, long hair, and they're like, you see, the Democrats are doing the same thing as Adolf. No.
I saw that too.
Like, come on.
Yeah, people could, on social media, just be so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, come on. That is not a fair comparison between the two.
Get rid of the Jews.
Yeah.
Save the environment.
This little girl using hyperbole and some dude just murdering millions of people. I'm not seeing the parallel there. But.
Yeah, so like in my opinion, I think Greta is exactly like Hitler Youth. No, I'm just kidding. It's like, oh wow. No,
okay.
So I agree. Like, I think it is good that, like, you know, she's, you know, taking a stand, like starting a movement. My problem, that I have two issues with it, right? I think the rhetoric, like the way she's going, the things she's saying, like her ideas, and the part of the movement is disturbing to me. Is kind of scares me, right? The idea, like at one point during her speech, she said, you know, all this stuff is happening and all you guys can talk about is who's going to pay for it. And she was so upset with that. But someone does have to pay for these things. Like, you know, you can't just be like, all right, let's drop everything, you know? Like, people need money, right? And you can't just do that. So the idea of just being like, forget money. If I went into a restaurant and I was like, hey, I'm super hungry, and they're like, well, how will you pay for it? And I'm like, all you care about is money, right? I'm hungry. You should give me food, you know?
Right.
Like, that's a part of it, right? And it worries me to think that there's a movement starting around the idea of like, you should just do this because we're telling you to do it, and I don't care how, like, I don't want you to talk about how it gets paid for. That's one of my issues. And then the second one is, it just bugs me that this 16-year-old girl, right? I mean, aside from sailing around the world in her multi-million-dollar sailing boat, talking about money isn't an issue. The idea that suddenly the whole world is behind her, like listening to this, and you know, because she's young, and I believe she has a form of Asperger's. Is that right? Like, because she's young and has that, like, no one is allowed to criticize her. She can't be touched. You can't criticize her because she's young. Like, and she's just starting this movement. Like, there's no reason to like disagree. And I'm like, if you're giving speeches to the UN, you can be criticized.
Right.
But here's the thing, though. People do criticize her, though. Like, I feel like she's getting slammed on a lot.
Yeah.
And so people are saying maybe don't, like, slam this kid, right? Like, because Greta's representative of something bigger. So, like, I see what you're saying about how she's saying, like, all you can talk about is money. But at the same time, I don't expect sound policy on, you know, financial implementation for environmental regulation from a 10-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not expecting that. So, but I'm expecting people to take heed to what this movement is saying and saying, how do we make it work? Because we can do that. We went to the moon. Yes, we went to the moon. Like, we went to the moon, right?
Oh, I don't know about that, man.
Yeah, that'll be the next episode.
You know, I think that we can say, okay, Greta is obviously representative of something else, and to pretend like it's really just her, I think that's naive. I don't know what's gonna happen next. Like we already talked about, it's not just America that has to be in this. There's a lot of other, also Mexico too, by the way. I'm talking about like Mexico and the environment. Like, we need to talk about like that, right? Like there's a number of nations that need things to change. Maybe does each country need their own Greta? Do we need like a Mexican Greta? Do we need like a Chinese Greta? No, like seriously, do we need like our own,
like someone like a spokesperson
who speaks like the language? Because it was even hard for Americans to get like rabble-roused by an Eastern European girl with pigtails who looks like she's from 20, right? It's kind of like interesting. It works, but is there something else we need? Do we need politicians right now, the people who are running, to be more clear on what they're? Because I'm yet to hear the clearest like proposal I've heard to save the environment is from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it was very extreme. I've not really heard anything from, so like my person right now who I want is Tulsi Gabbard. Not looking like it's gonna happen, but I reckon
it's looking pretty grim, man.
Yeah. I do like that she's taken out politicians, right? She took down Tim Ryan and Kamala Harris. I thought that was cool. All right, I think she's like a firebrand, but she's like big on foreign policy, right? That's like her thing. Foreign policy, we don't want war. Or people with Beto is sort of all over the place right now with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I've yet to hear someone really, really strong say, this is what we need to do with the environment. This is how we hold these countries accountable. This is a deal we can make with them where it's advantageous for them. I've yet to see anyone do that. Because here's what I think. I think maybe the environment for politicians is all talk, no action. They don't really care. What if they don't actually care that much? And you know what? They probably don't. Like, just to be honest with you, because I recognize that the environment we need to work on. And guess what? I don't do that much to, like, personally in my life to even, so I don't actually, like, I think it's a big deal when it comes to the spectrum and the spark of it. But in reality, I don't think our politicians really care.
Right. And it's something that they can use as a platform to get votes.
Yeah.
Which is huge, which is what they want to beat Trump.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying, in closing, I guess, that the bottom line is what's going to drive like climate change, actual policy and stuff. That it's not so much the movements, but it's the bottom line of the capitalism and
Yeah,
the free market.
because again, like this climate change debate isn't new, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be global warming, and then it changed to climate change, right? But it's been happening for years, you know? And the fact that it's still happening shows that the people that are up there saying we need to change aren't changing, you know? Like they're still flying their private jets, Leonardo DiCaprio. You know, like he makes his documentary about how we need to fix climate changes, and he interviews the Pope on it. Like how Leonardo DiCaprio and the Pope are climate change experts eludes me. But,
They're both on the Titanic.
all right, well, that's fair. Yeah, so I guess they got rid of the emissions coming from Titanic. So, but you know what I mean? Like, it's the reason that we're still having this debate is because the people that are saying it needs to stop aren't stopping it. And the way I know that is because we're still talking about it. Like, the companies would not be producing these things if they were losing money.
Right.
I promise you. And so the moment that people really do get on board, and I agree, like it's disgusting. Like I lived in Hawaii for a year, and you'd go on these beaches, and there would just be trash, and it was like that would wash up on the ocean from the ocean. Disgusting, you know, and like I hated it. But until people actually start doing what they're saying, I don't see it changing. I don't see the government being able to move the needle. So I really think it is on us. So in that sense, I do think we need Greta's, you know, talking to the people. I just don't think government's going to be the one to fix it.
All right. What are your closing thoughts?
And as a liberal, I say government is probably going to play a big role in fixing it. But, you know, I recognize the movements that are there, what you need, and private sector should do its job as well and figure out ways we can do this. And maybe our politicians need to have some long-term plan on how we can work with some other nations as well to clean this up. If you don't do that, well, all right, we'll just keep talking about it forever. And then, you know.
It's just going to keep going right in a circle.
Also, in our own nation, hey, we literally still have a city that doesn't have water that's clean.
Yeah, I need to bring it back to
I just want you to know, like, talk about the climate change in the environment. And like right here, you know what I mean? Like right here. If we can't give Detroit clean water, you think we're really going to do anything about the coast of China? You know what I mean? Like it's not that hard to do. So I think a lot of this is, to quote our president, all talk, no action. And let's get some real action and stop being keyboard quarterbacks.